It is an overcast day in May, and there is a piercing chill in the air when I enter the cemetery to start my new job. I gaze out the driver's side window of my Toyota at the rows and rows of concrete headstones standing erect in silence to the left, right, in front, and behind me. All of them seem just as colorless as the darkened sky. Some are crumbled from the weathering of centuries, others are smooth marble with new black writing and surrounded by floral tributes. Most, though, are overgrown and unkempt. I walk into the cemetery's office, a cozy little building cluttered with stray paperwork. A jovial woman, who introduces herself as my supervisor, briefs me on the office procedures, describing my job duties with the sort of enthusiasm typically reserved for those who are not routinely touched by death. My official job title is Burial Ground Custodian, and I will be working the graveyard shift from midnight to 8 in the morning. My duties include maintaining the landscaping, keeping the grounds clean, repairing cemetery stones or mausoleums when needed, digging graves, and making sure no one comes into the cemetery during the night. I know absolutely nothing about cemetery work, but I applied for the position anyway, figuring that I could learn on the job, just like every other job I've had over the years. And I guess there really aren't too many people out there searching for work at a cemetery, so that's probably most likely why I was hired. My supervisor hands me a set of keys to the gates and tells me that I can start that night. I didn't plan on making a career out of it, but I've been here for 27 years now. Nothing too interesting ever goes on around here, besides a fresh grave being dug every couple of weeks. Just like this morning when I arrived at the cemetery for a meeting. I noticed the gravedigger from the day shift up on a hill in the process of digging a grave to await its new occupant. The meeting drags on for over an hour, then afterward I head home to get some sleep before I return for my shift at midnight. Around 3 a.m., I'm sitting in the office flipping through the pages of a magazine that I found lying around when I hear voices coming from outside. I wipe the condensation from the small window next to the desk and peer out it. That's when I spot a teenage girl and boy running amok through the cemetery, laughing and screaming. I assume they're most likely trying to freak each other out. I let out an aggravated sigh, then grab my flashlight and phone from the desk. In all of my 27 years of working here, this is the first time that anyone has ever snuck into the cemetery. I get up from the desk, make sure I have the keys to the gates and office, and then lock the door behind me as I step outside. The voices have stopped now, but I shine the flashlight back and forth around the cemetery, hoping that they got bored and just decided to leave. But to my dismay, I find them 10 minutes later traipsing through the cemetery reading the headstones. They don't see me following them, probably because I don't have my flashlight on. Well, at least I don't think they do, until suddenly they stop. Then I hear the boy ask the girl, "Did you hear something?" I smirk to myself, thinking how it's going to make my night when I scare the shit out of them. The girl pauses and listens closely, then replies, "I don't hear anything. Stop trying to scare me." Then a second later, a strange groan echoes through the air and the girl's boyfriend takes off. The girl stays rooted to the spot she's in. Who's there?" she stutters. I cut on the flashlight and shine it at her. "It's just me, miss. I work here." I expect the terrified look on her face to disappear and a look of relief to replace it when she realizes that she's no longer alone, but it doesn't. "Oh, you scared me. But that's not what I was talking about," she tells me, trembling as she lifts her finger and slowly points towards something. Her hand is shaking so uncontrollably that I can hardly tell where she's even pointing. I shine my flashlight in the general direction of the area, but there's nothing over there besides one lonely grave. "Miss, I don't see anything." She continues to stand there, trembling and pointing. So I walk over to where she's standing so that maybe I'll see what she's seeing. She grabs a hold of my arm with a death grip as the groaning echoes throughout the cemetery once again. A tightness invades my chest and my heart begins to pound. I frantically shine the flashlight in every direction, and when the light comes to rest on the headstone of the grave that we're standing in front of, I see a hand curled around the side of it. And when the light hits it, it recoils and disappears. The girl must have seen it too, because her grip on my arm tightens, and now her sharp fingernails are digging into my skin. As much as I don't want to, I cautiously walk closer to the headstone, the moaning getting louder the closer that I get to it. Then, just as I shine the flashlight in back of it, some kid leaps out from behind it and scares the hell out of both me and the girl. She lets out a blood-curdling scream that reverberates throughout the cemetery. Then she falls backwards and lands on top of the grave. "Are you serious, Shane? Robert put you up to this, didn't he?" the girl questions. The boy nods, and then they both erupt in laughter. "Get the hell out of here," I shout at them as the girl scrambles to get up off of the ground. They speed right past me and zigzag in between the graves like they're trying to find their way out of a maze as they race toward the exit to the cemetery. "Sorry, didn't mean to give you a heart attack, old man," the boy yells over his shoulder at me. "Heart attack? I'm only 52 years old. I'm not going to let a couple of little shits scare me," I call after him. Then I place my hand over my heart and feel that it is racing at lightning speed. Damn, I think I almost did have a heart attack, I think to myself. I turn around and walk briskly after them to double check and make sure that the gates are locked. Once they climb over the fence, they dart away down the street and disappear into the darkness. After making sure that the gates are locked, I make my way back to the office. I go back to browsing through the magazine I was looking at, and about an hour later, I hear the doorknob rattle. Assuming it's the kids that I just kicked out of the cemetery earlier tonight, I dash over to it in a hurry, prepared to catch them. I bust out there, but I don't see anyone. I stand in the doorway, waiting a few minutes to see if maybe they ran and hid behind a headstone and are just waiting for me to go back inside. But after 5 minutes and no sign of them, I head back in and lock the door behind me. I settle back into my chair and gaze out the window, ready to catch the little shits in the act if they attempt anything again. After waiting for almost an hour and nothing happening, I start to doze off, but am soon jolted awake by the sound of banging on the office door. It's so loud and intense that it seems like the door is about to come off of the frame the way the noise cracks through the air. With my heart racing, I open the door and am surprised to see that no one is standing on the other side. I close the door, then relock it, and luckily the rest of my shift is uneventful. The next night, my wife Shelley drops by the cemetery during her break and brings me something to eat, which is something she does a few times a week. She's a registered nurse and works the graveyard shift as well at a nursing home nearby. I didn't tell her about my weird experience at work last night because I didn't want to alarm her. So tonight, as I'm walking her back to her car to leave, I see her reach back behind her and touch her ponytail. Then she stops dead in her tracks and turns around with a funny look on her face. I ask her what's wrong and she says, "I thought I felt something. I must have just gotten my ponytail caught in a tree branch." I probably shouldn't have done what I did next because it only made matters worse, but I point out that the closest tree is like 20 feet away. Her face turns really pale and she tells me, "William, it felt like someone ran their hand through my hair front to back and then they pulled on it." Needless to say, she was pretty damn freaked out. Shit, I was too. She raced out of there after that and swore that she was never coming back. I guess I'll have to start packing my lunch from now on. The following night when I get to work, the first thing I do after punching in is make my rounds. Once I'm finished, I begin to make my way back to the office to look over the list of things my supervisor left me to do for the night, when I hear a woman's laughter. A chill runs down my spine like a bolt of electricity. People think of laughter as a sound that comes from the mouth when someone is happy, but this is nothing like that. This laugh is maniacal, like it comes from deep within, from the pit of a person's soul. The night after that, I'm walking through the cemetery cleaning off some of the older headstones that have become caked with dirt and grime over time. As I'm bent down scrubbing one of them, I suddenly feel a sharp stinging sensation across my back. I bolt upright, shove my hand as far down the back of my shirt as I can, and flinch when my fingers brush across a fresh scratch. I rush back to the office, dart into the bathroom, and pull my shirt off. When I turn around so that my back is facing the mirror and glance into it, I'm appalled. There are 3 deep, raw scratches stretching from one side of my back to the other. It looks as though I threatened someone and they had to defend themselves, but obviously that's not the case. I clean them the best that I can with some water and paper towels, and then I finish the rest of my shift. This morning when I get off, I go straight home and climb into bed. I haven't been getting much sleep lately, so I've been really exhausted. and usually I doze off for a few minutes here and there throughout my shift, but last night I felt so uncomfortable sitting in that desk chair because of the scratches on my back that I was awake the entire night. I start to doze off just as I hear Shelly come home from work and climb into bed next to me. I don't sleep well this time either. I have a horrible nightmare. I'm at the cemetery and something leads me toward one of the graves. It belongs to a recent occupant, a woman named Agnes Sampson. The closer that I get to it, I realize that the grave is the same one that is located up on the hill where I heard groaning that night those teenagers snuck into the cemetery. When I'm standing right above it, a slender bony hand reaches up from beneath the dirt and grabs me. I wake up screaming, drenched in sweat. Shelly sits up in the bed next to me and asks, "Okay, I've had enough. What's going on with you? You've been acting funny all week." I finally tell her about all of the strange things that have been going on for the past week. Then I tell her about the nightmare I just had. She rubs my back, trying to comfort me until I fall back asleep. I wake up a few hours later and go about my daily routine, dreading what may happen tonight when I get to work. That night, I'm surprised to see Shelly show up at the cemetery. She had told me before that she was never coming back. I meet her at the front gate. "What are you doing here? Is everything all right?" "Look, I did some thinking after you told me about everything that's been happening to you, and you're the most rational person that I know. But don't you think it's weird how nothing crazy has ever happened to you the entire time that you've worked here until now? I mean, this place has got to be crawling with ghosts and spirits. So I just knew that something had to be going on. And look what I found." She shoves a pile of papers into my hands. They are newspaper articles about the woman, Agnes Sampson, whose grave that I saw in my dream. Then, with a look of more excitement than she should probably have in this situation, but she does love her true crime shows, she starts to explain. They think that her boyfriend tried to murder her in a jealous rage. The police discovered her body when her employer called them and asked if they'd perform a welfare check because she hadn't shown up for work in a few days. They found her body in the attic of her home in the middle of a ritual circle. Since she believed in witchcraft so much, they think that she crawled up there after her boyfriend stabbed her, hoping that it'd provide her with some sort of protection, but she ended up bleeding to death up there. They also came across numerous other items in her home that led them to believe that she had been performing cult and satanic rituals. Among them were a chalice, a staff, and an athame. I cut in and ask, "What in the hell is an athame?" "It's just a knife that is used by witches to perform rituals." Beneath the article are photos of the circle with a pentagram in the middle and the other items mentioned. Shelly snatches the papers back. "Now I'm not sure why she's been haunting you, but if all of this is true and she really is a witch, then the only way to stop it is to burn the body." I stand there staring at her in disbelief. Is this really happening? This can't be real, I think to myself. But the more that I do think about it, I realize it's really the only thing that makes sense. I glance at my watch and see that I still have another 6 hours until my shift ends. I look at Shelly and tell her, "Okay, we're going to need some gas." Then we hop into her car and head to the nearest gas station a block away. On the ride there, my wife begins to laugh. I look at her like she's crazy. I see nothing funny about this situation. "What are you laughing at?" She glances over at me with a look of confusion on her face. "William, what in the hell are you talking about?" she questions as we pull into the parking lot of the gas station. I get out, retrieve the gas can from her trunk, and fill it. Then we start heading back to the cemetery. When we're right down the street, I hear the laughter again. "What is so funny?" I angrily ask Shelly. When I look over at her, I see that her eyes are frozen in fear and fixed on the rearview mirror, not paying attention at all to where she's going. And then the next thing that I know, we crash right into a tree. Both of us are disoriented, but luckily we're okay. The laughing floods my ears again. Shelly hears it too this time and barely manages to speak, but whispers, "William, finish this. You have to finish this." I unbuckle my seatbelt and grab the gas can from the floor behind my seat. "That's it! I'm going to end this now!" I scream as I run down the street toward the cemetery. I bust through the gates, grab a shovel from the shed where all of the tools, supplies, and lawn equipment are kept, and then walk along the path until it leads me to the hill where Agnes's grave is located. I'm grateful for the full moon tonight because it brightens up the night sky and it'll make it easier to dig. I sit the gas can down and jam the shovel into the dirt. Thankfully, it hasn't hardened yet. I can hear thunder rumbling in the distance. I dig and dig for what feels like an eternity when finally the shovel hits something hard. I brush the dirt from the top of the casket, and then horrid images start to run through my mind of what I'm about to see. Her lunging out to grab me like how she did in my dream, or her rotting, decaying corpse staring back at me. Just as I'm about to open it, raindrops begin to fall. I look up at the sky and think to myself, I need to hurry up and get this over with before it starts pouring. Then I muster up enough strength to swing the lid open. When I lift it, I'm shocked to see that Agnes is not in there. What in the hell is going on? What is a man doing in here? I whisper to myself. As I continue to stare at him in surprise, I realize that he looks familiar. Then it finally registers where I've seen him before. His picture was in the newspaper article that Shelley just showed me. The man is Agnes's boyfriend. The same maniacal laughter that I've now heard so many times before surrounds me, causing my ears to start ringing. I cover them and my heart starts pounding, harder than it ever has before. I turn around and get ready to climb out of the hole when I see Agnes standing above the grave laughing. She has the numbers 666 carved into her forehead. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots down my left arm, and then I feel a tight squeezing sensation in my chest. I lift my hand to grip my chest, and just as I do, a sudden dizziness overwhelms me, and then everything goes black. I wake up to nothing but darkness. As I feel around, I observe a heaviness on top of me that I'm incapable of lifting. I begin to panic. No, this can't be happening. Then I reach into my pocket and pull out a lighter, the same lighter that I was going to set Agnes's body on fire with. When I ignite the flame, I now see that it's my wife's body resting upon me. Shelley, wake up, I cry. I feel her wrist for a pulse, and realizing that she's dead, I burst into tears. With one hand, I hold her as tightly as I can, and with my other, I use the lighter to look around. All I can see is the silky white interior of the coffin. As it dawns on me that I'm inside of Agnes's coffin, I now realize that the police got the story all wrong. I don't think that her boyfriend killed her in a jealous rage. I think that they were summoning something, and summoning something they did. I think it just took her dying for it to be released. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.